All right, the election might be a few months off. It's not until next May, but the battle lines are being drawn and people are possibly starting to make up their minds. The Tories have their man, the Labour has its man, and he's in front of me, Labour MP Sadiq Khan. Mr. Khan, just briefly before we take calls, how much do you think Londoners are at this time starting to form their idea of which way they may cast their vote in 5 months? Good morning, Sadiq.
Morning, Nick. It's lovely to be here. I think most Londoners are thinking about it. A lot aren't. If I was to put a number, I'd say I reckon 4 out of 10 Londoners haven't decided what they're doing.
As many as that? 40% of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's a good thing. I think what's incumbent upon anybody who wants to be the mayor of this great city is that they use the next 5 months to persuade Londoners why it should be them, what our vision is for the city, what ideas we've got, and to persuade you on May the 5th to lend me your vote.
Let's get you on talking to some of those potential voters and the callers. Ian's in Welling, and you're through to Sadiq Khan. Go ahead, Ian.
Good morning, Sadiq.
Morning, Ian.
I'm wondering what you think of Jeremy Corbyn going to the Stop the War Coalition Christmas party. I mean, it kind of looks, I think, to many people like he's just being blown around by whichever focus group seems to shout the loudest on Twitter. And I'm just wondering what you think of that and whether you yourself would have gone had you been in his position.
Well, let me answer directly. No, I wouldn't have gone to the Stop the War Coalition Christmas party, but to be fair to Jeremy Corbyn, he's got a long association with the Stop the War movement. I think he's one of the founders. And he would say that, you know, just because he's become the leader, he doesn't want to cut off from them. What I would say is, you know, the job of the leader of the Labour Party is to be the Prime Minister in waiting, and that means you're right, you've got to start talking to everybody. And so just as important is for Jeremy to talk to the Stop the War Coalition, it's as important for him to talk to other members of society who've got a say in relation to whether it's business interests, whether it's others in our society. And so I'm looking forward to seeing Jeremy Corbyn doing more of that, meeting, listening, engaging with people, and I'm sure he will. He's only been the leader for 3 months, Ian, and I think, you know, he needs to, over the course of the next year, persuade people like you why he's the right person to lead our party and lead Her Majesty's official opposition as the next Prime Minister in waiting.
Why wouldn't you have gone to the dinner, Mr. Khan?
Well, I'm not a member of Stop the War Coalition. Some of the views that have been on their website are views that I don't agree with.
Such as, what are the views you don't like?
I mean, some of the comments they made after Paris, I think you've got to be careful because the impression people will have, rightly or wrongly, is that you agree with the views and you subscribe to those views. It's very different, and I often do go to meetings of groups and I make quite clear I don't agree with all your views, but I'm here to listen and to engage. And the concern voters may have, Ian's probably got, is by going along and by speaking, is an impression being created that one subscribes completely with the views of the organisation.
Let's bring Ian in on that. Ian?
Well, I think to say that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't subscribe to all the views of Stop the War when, as you said, he was one of the founding members and used to be the chairman, I think is pushing reality a little bit. I mean, his idea of engaging with people seems to be, from what I can read in the press and on his own statement, seems to be to engage with people like Hezbollah and Hamas and the IRA. I haven't seen him engaging much even with his own brother, who I believe is fairly anti-climate change, Piers Corbyn, who said that when he was on This Week, said that Jeremy didn't really want to talk about that very much. So he seems to be engaging with all the people who confirm his own views, rather than engaging with anybody who might challenge it, like, for example, most of the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Well, look, I mean, when Nick Ferrari and the wonderful team at LBC organised Call Corbyn, he can answer those questions directly. And well, I'm here to talk about, you know, what Khan thinks about these things, and I've set out my views quite clearly in relation to Stop the War Coalition and their Christmas party.
Let's move on to other calls. Just after I ask you this, how much of an asset or otherwise will Mr. Corbyn be to your campaign?
My campaign is my campaign. I want to set out to Londoners what my vision is for this city, what experiences I've got that make me the right person for this job. There'll be occasions, many occasions, where I'll agree with the Labour leadership. There'll be some occasions where I disagree. By the way, there'll be occasions where I agree with the Conservative government, where I think it's in the best interests of London, indeed the current mayor, but occasions where I disagree with them. What London has
will
never
Mr.
wanted,
Corbyn be touring London with you?
There'll be occasions we'll be campaigning together, of course.
Will he feature on your literature and your leaflets?
He didn't in my first one. That was just me, including me in shorts when I was 15.
Right.
I was growing up in
so
London.
He's not going to be in any of your literature?
The point is London's never voted for a candidate who's the patsy of their leader or their party. What Londoners want is not a spokesperson so much for their party or their leader. What they want is an advocate and a fighter for our city. And that's what I intend to do over the course of the next 5 months. There'll be occasions
But it would be handy to have him on side.
There'll be occasions where he and I agree. He's passionate about reducing inequality. He understands the housing crisis in London. He's seen it for himself as a London Member of Parliament. There'll be other occasions where we disagree. I've already made my views known in relation to my views on the National Anthem. I've already made my views known in relation to Heathrow Airport and Gatwick Airport. I've already made my views known in relation to my views on the importance of business to London's jobs and growth. I mean, I've got to be my own person, and that's really important over the next 5 months that I do that.
If you had your time over, would you nominate him to be leader of the Labour Party again?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, what's really important is we understand the Labour Party had a contest during the course of the summer to choose not simply the mayoral candidate, but also the leader of the party. And what's important is we had a robust debate within the party. I think it's wrong to exclude somebody from the contest. He got on the ballot paper. The other candidates' campaigns had their flaws. He had his flaws as well, but he won fair and square. He's now won a big mandate in all three sections, and he should be given the chance to, put in practice what he's been preaching.
But he's the person who said if there was a terror incident in London, that you should probably try and talk to the guy.
Listen, I can organise Call Corbyn for you if you want, and you can ask me these questions directly. But
why would you?
I was quite clear when I nominated Jeremy Corbyn. On the day I nominated him, I made it quite clear in the media that I wasn't going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. I was going to nominate him to make sure there was a proper debate. I even, during the course of my selection, made clear that I was not intending to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. But it's important that the Labour movement had a say in who the leader was, and they have had their voices heard, and he's been chosen the leader.
Karen's in Wandsworth. You're through to Sadiq Khan. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi. So I was just wondering why you were trying to take credit for Crossrail when I saw in my local paper that you weren't even a transport minister when it started.
Thanks for that question, Carol. So let me tell you my role in relation to Crossrail. I was a minister in communities and local government and took through the Business Rates Supplement Bill as it was then, now became the Business Rates Supplement Act. And this act paved the way for companies in London to contribute towards Crossrail. The wonderful thing about Crossrail, there are many wonderful things about Crossrail, is it's paid for not simply by central government taxation, not simply by London taxpayers via London government, but also by businesses. £4 billion. And the bill that allowed that to happen was a bill that I took through Parliament. Subsequently, I became the Minister for Crossrail in 2009 and was involved in a number of the discussions.
But the Crossrail Act was started in 2005.
The Act started, but as you will know, the actual green light wasn't given until much later. What's important is that the paving bill...
Finished in 2008.
What
role are you playing at this time, did you say?
Took the business rates bill through Parliament.
The business rates bill.
Yeah.
So that allows you to say that you're one of the architects of Crossrail.
I had a role. I was a Crossrail minister, and I played a role in Crossrail. I'm really proud of Crossrail, and I'm looking forward to...
You don't get to transport until 2009.
And I'm looking forward to, as the mayor, opening Crossrail in 2018-19.
Right. Yes, let's just hear where we are now at the moment, if we may. It's not until 2009 you get into transport. Crossrail Act started in 2005, finished in 2008. I'm actually quoting Tony McNulty, former Labour Transport Minister. You've just got this totally wrong, haven't you?
Had we not got the funding from the private sector, the £4 billion, we would never have had Crossrail. What was really important is that we found the way to fund Crossrail, and the Business Rates Supplement Act does that. Look, there is no way the government was going to pay 19 billion pounds to pay for Crossrail. It's all well and good having an act.
I led on big projects such as Crossrail, you say on your leaflet. No, you didn't.
I was the Crossrail minister in 2009 to 2010.
By which time it had already been done.
Well, no, the project's not been done until it's open.
I appreciate that, but the act had been passed.
Well, the same thing could be said, and I think it'd be wrong, to say Boris Johnson has not had a role in relation to Crossrail. Boris Johnson became the mayor in 2008. So if your argument is right, Boris Johnson has no role at all in Crossrail. That's just not true, Nick, because until Crossrail's open, the project hasn't been completed. Even now, Londoners can't see the benefits of Crossrail. They won't until it's finished. So every single person who's been involved in the design, getting the funding through, getting the project on the ground and getting it open has a role in Crossrail. And by the way, I just say this, in the time it's taken us from inception until it opening to build one Crossrail, Paris has built 5. We've got to learn the lessons of Crossrail and make sure the next project, I'm looking forward to Crossrail 2, is better and quicker.
Karen, quick response from you.
To be honest, I just don't believe you. You changed your mind on Heathrow when you announced you were running for mayor too, so...
Have you changed your mind on Heathrow? Where are you on Heathrow?
Let me talk to you about Heathrow and Gatwick Karen, I've accepted the case that there is a need for increased fight capacity in this part of the country. Last year, though, almost 10,000 Londoners died as a direct result of air quality. There are children whose lungs are underdeveloped as a direct result of air quality. And early this year, the UK Supreme Court in April held that our air was in breach of the Air Quality Directive. So our air is a killer. It makes you sick and it's unlawful. In those circumstances, I can't possibly support a new runway at Heathrow, which will make matters worse rather than better. But there is an alternative. There is an alternative the government could today give the green light to rather than dithering and delay. And that's a new runway at Gatwick. It's far cheaper. The numbers of people affected by noise and air is far fewer. By the way, a new runway at Heathrow affects more than 700,000 people, the noise. That's more than people affected in Paris, Brussels, Madrid and Frankfurt added together. Plus there will be years and years and years of legal challenges. So there is an answer.
When you were Transport Minister, you under Gordon Brown, you supported Heathrow.
No, I've made the point, Nick. In 2009, things were different. 2015
How long do things stay
and
the
14.
same with you?
Let me explain, Joe. It was last year.
You changed your opinion more than I changed my socks.
Well, it was last year, not in 2009, that almost 10,000 Londoners died because of air quality. It was this year, in April, not 2009, that the UK Supreme Court held that our air was in breach of the Air Quality Directive. It is now that children's lungs are being underdeveloped. We've got an alternative. The alternative is a new runway at Gatwick Airport. And I think what the government should do is give the green light to Gatwick, which means more jobs. It means growth. But you know what else it means? It means better competition for Heathrow Airport. That's why we need to go ahead and get Gatwick going.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Karen. Geraldine is in Woodford. Geraldine, go ahead.
Hello, good morning, Sadiq.
Good morning.
I wanted to ask you about, Boris made a comment yesterday after the exciting, you sending Tom Peake into space about our contribution, increasing our contribution to the space programme. I just wondered what you felt about that.
Well, I saw the pictures as well about Major Peake in space.
Tim Peake as well.
Yeah, Tim Peake rather than Tom.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly excited. I mean, look, science and innovation are so crucial, Geraldine. And one of the wonderful things about yesterday was, imagine the numbers of young Londoners, young people all around the country, all around the world, who may be inspired as a result to get interested in science, whether it's physics, biology, astrology, whatever it is. And actually, if you look at the countries around the world doing really well, they're countries who invest in sciences. And, I want to see young girls in particular doing sciences. And the way we get young people excited about science is just imagining what could happen if you studied science and got involved in science. And actually, one of the things we've known from history, Geraldine, is investing in science leads to other benefits. Apparently, the stick-free pan is thanks to science. The Teflon, I think, is.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
The Mac is also. So there are side benefits of getting men and women in space. But I think the wonders of your imagination being opened up and the joy of learning for the sake of learning is one of the big boons of Major Tim Peake going into space and on that space station.
Geraldine, thank you. Ian in Putney, you're on the radio, Ian.
Hi there, good morning, gentlemen. Hope you're both well.
Yes, thanks.
Sadiq, just a brief one there. I think we may be on the same page on this one. I'm sure you still stand by your decision to vote against bombing in Syria, but it would be really good to confirm this and just share a couple of your main arguments, both for me and just for everyone else listening.
Thanks, Ian. The decision to get involved in military action is the most difficult an MP takes. I mean, I've taken many difficult decisions because whatever you do, people are going to die. You've just got to accept that. And so you don't reach the decision lightly. So I had an open mind when David Cameron first talked about military involvement in Syria. In fact, I've got to be honest, the atrocities in Paris made me, more sympathetic to get involved in military action in Syria. I listened very carefully to what David Cameron said. One of the benefits of being a Privy Councillor is you get briefings from the experts, the security services and others in relation to what the strategy is, what their plans are and stuff. And I've got to be honest, I wasn't persuaded that we had an effective plan to defeat Daesh, or as they call themselves, ISIL. I wasn't persuaded that getting involved in airstrikes would make us safer. And let me tell you why. The Prime Minister talked about there being 70,000 ground troops in Syria who would aid and abet the airstrikes that would be taking place. That just simply isn't the case. And once you start asking questions about who these 70,000 are, there are more questions than there are answers. And in those circumstances, Ian, I couldn't possibly support an extension of military action into Syria. If I was persuaded that it would defeat or even weaken Daesh, or if I was persuaded it would make us safer, then I would have supported it. I wasn't persuaded, and so I couldn't.
Ian, thank you. Jeff in Edmonton, you're on the radio, Jeff.
Good morning. Mr. Khan, you recently stated that when you worked as a lawyer, you had to challenge the hideous extremist views of seemingly intelligent and articulate people who look and sound like normal Londoners, until they say that 9/11 was a Mossad conspiracy. The definition of an extremist is someone who has beliefs that most people think are unreasonable and unacceptable. So you would have us believe that 19 men armed with box cutters, directed by a man in a cave, carried out the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world. Considering that most people believe that to be total Bravo Sierra and unreasonable and unacceptable, which one of us holds the most extremist views? Is it me or you?
I'm not really sure, Jeff, what your question is. I mean, I've been quite clear that we've got to...
You're stating that people that hold these views are extremists. And I'm saying that your view of what I just talked about is an extremist view.
What, Mr. Khan's view that people who want to come here and slit your throat are extremists, Jeff? Is that what you're saying?
I just said that the definition of the word extremist means someone who has beliefs that most people think are unreasonable and unacceptable.
Well, how does Mr. Khan have any of that? Jeff, I just don't see a question here. Unless you can now move to a question really quick. It's just like a diatribe, respectfully, Jeff.
No, it is totally unacceptable and unreasonable, which is the definition of extremist, that you say that those events happen and we are people that are labelled as extremists.
OK. I don't really know what we'll take from that. What I would say, though, on this subject, Jeff, thank you for the call. We move on. You may recall the Sun newspaper did a poll some weeks ago in which they were widely criticised for interpreting the reaction that 1 in 5 young Muslims were supporters with, or could see sympathies with jihadists, and you gave a comment to the Sun. Do you regret that now?
No, listen, there's two separate issues. One is the Sun extrapolating from the poll, their headline. I think the Sun themselves have talked about that. The separate issue is the comments I've made in relation to the importance to tackle social segregation and the importance of integrating. And I stand by those views. I think it's really important we recognise that actually, as brilliant as this city is...
When the Sun phoned you up for a comment, did you ask how they'd got those numbers?
No, I didn't. Well,
something as sensitive as that, Mr. Gunn. You want to be the mayor of London.
Let me explain you the timelines.
The biggest selling newspaper in the land rings you up, says you're not going to believe this, Mr. Gunn. 1 in 5 Muslims sympathises. You say, wow, yeah, I'll give you a quote.
Let me explain the timelines. So I agreed to write an article for the Sun newspaper based upon a speech I made about the importance of tackling social segregation and fighting integration. The article was written and submitted to the Sun in advance of them doing their poll, or let me know about the poll. So, as you know, these things happen days in advance, and they then did their poll, I think, on the Monday. So the way the timelines work, as you know, and you know this, Nick, is it's agreed days in advance, and not unreasonably, the editor of a newspaper doesn't, give an MP editorial control of what headlines are.
This is all about timing, isn't it? Labour London mayoral hopeful Sadiq Khan tells The Sun today, quotes, "It's clear Britain needs to take its head out of the sand and act to tackle extremism and radicalisation at home." But you didn't think to ask how many people had been polled. That
was a speech I'd made a week earlier before the poll, and so the point is this: you can.
So you didn't tell the Sun that the day of publication.
The day it was published, those were my comments in the Sun newspaper. But the speech was made a week earlier to journalists in Westminster, and I feel really strongly about this. It's really important that we understand that although this may be the best city in the world, we're incredibly proud of our diversity. We've got to talk about these issues. There are Londoners this week. There was a Londoner who was convicted of a very serious offence, wanting to slit the throat of those in the armed services and the police officers. But also there are Londoners who got on a plane, went to Syria thinking somehow that would help people rather than giving to charity and get involved as an active citizen here. We've got to talk about these things, both as parents, as teachers, as citizens, Muslims and non-Muslims.
We move on. Thank you. James in Mitcham, you're on the radio.
Hi, Sadiq. I just wanted to
Hi, James.
I know that you said that you supported the night tube, but I read it at the Sun website that you share the offices with exactly the same unions that are blocking it. So you're running your campaign from their offices, which means you're sitting at the same desks as them. So I just wanted to know whose side of the table you're on, either ordinary workers or the strikers.
Well, James, let me just clarify for the avoidance of any doubt. I share offices with nobody, just my staff. The building I'm in, There are civil servants in there. As far as I understand it, there are no trade unions in that building. There may be, and I'm not. There's nothing wrong with this. People who are members of trade unions, but I can assure you,
you're not at the TSSA offices. Then?
No. I can assure you, James, I'm not. But can I deal with this directly? I think I'm really proud, by the way, that there are hard-working nurses, teachers, bus drivers, tube workers who are supporting my bid to be the mayor of London. I'm not embarrassed at all by that. I think actually what the mayor needs to do is talk to those who run our tubes. Say, look, I want a night tube.
You want when can you deliver it by?
It's important for our night economy. We need to make sure it happens.
How will you deliver?
Sit down round the table with me. Let me explain my style of working, Nick. And as I said to you last time, you wouldn't like it if somebody came in here tomorrow and said you've got to start working a 3 to 5 shift. You'd want to talk to them, negotiate, listen. And that's the same, James.
They want more money.
That's the same, James, whether you're an LBC presenter or whether you're a tube worker, or whether you're a junior doctor. Well, they're not asking for more money. When you speak to them, what they're saying is we're a bit concerned about the rosters. Right, we're a bit concerned about health and safety and about the shift patterns and stuff. It's not about money. It's about talking and listening and engaging. And I will do that as a mayor. I'm not the mayor yet, but even now people are asking me how to solve this problem. Let me see how we'll solve it. If night tubes aren't running by May the 5th, as soon as possible after May the 5th, I will sit down with those at TfL who have been responsible for the discussions. I'll sit down with those who represent the tube workers and say, what is the blockage? Why can't we get this going? If we have night tubes in London, the night economy benefits, London benefits, but the tube workers benefit from the extra shifts. Nick, we've got to sit down and listen to them.
Will you pay them more money?
They're not asking for more money.
So they won't get any more money for
They're not asking for more money.
So they won't get it. Right. No. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Danny's in Marylebone. You're on the radio. Danny, go ahead.
Morning, Sir Dave.
Morning, Dan.
I've got a question. It's about transport, specifically buses. That Goldsmith, I think it was on Nick's show. He said if he gets in, he would let certain cars in bus lanes and eventually do away with bus lanes.
He didn't. He talked about the possibility of electric cars.
Can we just let Nick defend Zach? Sorry, go, Nick.
He talked about the possibility of electric cars using bus lanes. There's quite an important distinction, Danny.
Also, since on from that, he's also confirmed that he would eventually do away with bus lanes. Well, now, with the congestion at the moment, more space given over to cyclists on the roads. Ludicrously policy of, I think it's about 100,000 minicabs on the road at the moment. Doing away with bus lanes must be one insane idea. Even letting electric cars in bus lanes. Everyone will just get an electric car. Can you confirm, Sadiq, that you'll keep bus lanes?
I can unequivocally confirm that. I will do that. I was just waiting to see Dan. So I was looking at Nick to see whether Nick wanted to defend Zach again, but he doesn't. So let me answer.
Wasn't defending. It's a point of accuracy,
That's okay,
Mr. Khan.
mate.
As they say, same would you. You can't say all cars when it's electric cars. It's what's known as a point of accuracy.
All right, Dan. Now that Nick's made it as clear as mud.
I would do the same with you if you misrepresented.
Now that Nick's made it as clear as mud, let me tell you what I would do.
I don't see what's mud about that.
As a future mayor of London,
electric car versus petrol or diesel powered
I think bus lanes are crucial to enable buses to go smoothly through our city. When I was the Minister for Transport, Nick, you've been spending time going through my records. I was also the mayor. I was also the Minister who worked with the mayor, Boris Johnson, by the way, to get a permit scheme in London. Because one of the big gripes people had was roads being dug up all the time for Thames Water or utilities. And a road could be dug up today and the same road would be dug up in 3 months' time. And it meant bus lanes being clogged up. So I said need to have a permit system working with the mayor. So you apply to dig up a road and let everyone else know you're doing so. And that way it'll only be dug up once in a long period of time rather than regular times, because bus lanes need to flow smoothly. The idea of getting rid of bus lanes will mean, Dan, buses clogged up in traffic not going smoothly through our city, which means you and I wouldn't want to use the bus because we've got no certainty that we'll get from A to B in a certain amount of time. And so we've got to be very careful about getting rid of bus lanes or talking about getting rid of bus lanes. And I'd be firmly against doing that.
All right. Just on the subject of, we've got the last minute or so, just on the subject of road space, where are you on the cycle super highway programme?
One that's being built now.
The one that's being built. I mean, obviously you can't stop it. How much of a supporter are you?
Yeah, well, I think segregated cycle lanes are very important. I think there are lessons to be learned about the way this one was handled. It's really important we learn those lessons. I don't think we should put all our eggs in the segregated cycle basket.
Does that mean you wouldn't necessarily do more of them?
No, there is a need for segregated cycle lanes, but also there are other options, quiet ways. These are basically diverting cyclists down side roads as well. It's really important to make cycling safer. Not have HGV lorries in rush hour would encourage cyclists. Look at the junctions. A number of times, Nick, over the last few years.
You haven't got control of the boroughs, have you? You can't necessarily get into their roads because they'll just tell you no.
This is a really important difference between me and the current guy and the next guy who could be. You've got to talk to people, whether it's tube workers, whether it's the 32 London boroughs or City of London Corporation, and work because it's in their interests to have safe cycling. You've talked on a number of occasions over the last 3 years about these dangerous junctions, whatever it is. We know what they are. Why can't we sort them out? It's really important to do so. And so I learned the lessons from the mistakes made over the last 8 years, but make sure we encourage people to cycle safer. That is the future.
Just coming back last week, Mr. Khan, to the airport, we touched on your views on Heathrow and Gatwick. What we do know is that they're going to be cut off for Christmas. The rail lines will be suspended in one instance for up to 10 days. This means hundreds of thousands of people trying to leave the country, and indeed we should say people living and working, trying to get to and from for work, are going to be inconvenienced. Your views on that?
I think it's really important that the Mayor of London is responsible for transport in and around London. I'm calling on the Department for Transport, I'm calling on the government to give the next Mayor of London the powers over commuter trains coming into and out of London. So, for example, we now have the Oyster card at Gatwick Airport, which is great. But actually, I want the Mayor to be in charge of the train going to and from Gatwick. That would mean...
You can take the Oyster to Gatwick, can you?
You can, yeah. That would mean that you wouldn't have this ridiculous situation where the DfT allow maintenance work to take place at the busiest time of the year. People wanting to go and see their family, people wanting to go and
But if they
travel.
don't do it then, Mr. Khan, when do they maintain the lines?
This is why you've got to make sure that you do this work at the right time. So, let me give you an example. The Mayor currently, TfL, is in charge of buses, overground, tubes and DLR, because the Mayor's closer to the coalface than a civil servant in the Department for Transport. If the Mayor was also in charge of essential commuter trains coming into London, the service would be better, more frequent trains, better services.
How? How would you make more trains?
Because you would be the person who's in charge of the franchises. You would say to the TOCs, the train
so you're
operating
going to be in charge of
companies,
all the rail franchises as well?
Coming into and out of London. It's really important that the government has trust in Londoners to elect somebody in charge of transport.
So that would put you're talking about mainline as well.
Commuter trains. So commuter services coming to Paddington or Victoria.
But when do they maintain
Waterloo?
the lines? If you sadly, they've obviously taken the decision. We won't inconvenience commuters. We're going to inconvenience people trying to get away. We're going to interview flyers or whatever you want to say.
They've got to be
so when are you going to maintain the lines?
I'll give you an example. Just like the tubes have to be upgraded, it can sometimes be a nuisance, the signalling being upgraded and stuff. We try and do it. TfL tries to do it, to be fair to Boris Johnson, at a time which is the least inconvenient to commuters. We've got to do the same with overground trains. The problem is this. The civil servants who make the decisions are too far away from the service. If the service users had a role in this, if TfL had a role in this, there'd be better services, more frequent, and we get a better deal. So I'm calling on the government to give the Mayor power over commuter trains coming into and out of London.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
You too, mate. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to you, Nick. And your listeners and everyone who's listening.
Do I think people have overreacted? Yes, I do think people have overreacted, which doesn't mean I support the tone of everything Donald Trump has said, because I don't. And I've been watching this Republican contest with fascination for months, and I keep thinking that